thanks to everybody for coming out today. I'm really excited to introduce Rebecca Aronson, one of our featured poets today. Rebecca is the author of 3 books of poetry, Anchor, which is the winner of the 2024 Poetry Award from the Philosophical Society of Texas, and the 2024 Eric Hoffer Award for poetry. She's also the author of Ghost Child of the Atalanta Bloom and Creature, which won the Maine Traveled Roads Poetry Prize. She's been a recipient of a Prairie Schooner Strousse Award, the Loft Speakeasy Poetry Prize, a Tennessee Williams Scholarship to Sewanee, and a Yetzirah Poetry Fellowship. She's the co-founder and host of Bad Mouth, a series of words and music in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Please join me in welcoming Rebecca. Thank you.
Thank you to Claire and to Stefan for hosting, and to the Hot L series and Bird in Hand. I'm really happy to be here. I'm also super excited to be reading with Wayne, who I was involved in choosing his very first chapbook back in 2006 and have been a major admirer since then. So delighted to be here with them. So I'm going to read a few poems from my book, Anchor. Anchor was written during a couple of years when my parents were dying. And my father had Parkinson's disease, so he was falling a lot. And so I started thinking about gravity, this force that kept pulling him down, and wrote a series of letters to gravity that are sprinkled throughout the book. So I'm going to read some of those, and then I'm going to try out a couple of newish ones on you. So, and the letters to gravity, they're all called Dear Gravity. Dear Gravity, at night I think about you just as I think about the moon, how it pulls my body's rhythms into shapes I live by but never asked for. You dislodge an old man from his own center, my father, subverted. You and the moon meddle and distort. I want to understand, as if knowledge were actually power. Things fall because space curves. Space curves because of matter. The body's matter displaces space a little with every step, and so he falls, my father, his mind on the curve of pavement, carefully treading on matter's ghostly shadow. Dear Gravity, do you imagine he is trying to escape you? Jealous, you pull him close and closer, leave cement kisses on his appendages. His blood soaks through asphalt, through sidewalk paving, pools and car parks, trying to get to you. Already you're bonded. See, he loves you back. Only his bones, they might belong to air. It's not so much they strive for flight, but they dissolve, becoming mist, becoming cloud. His heavy brain unbalances him. I know, you are trying to make an anchor, having filled his legs with fluid until they nearly burst. Hear them sloshing. I think they have their own tides that tug and wash him to the ground, which embraces him the only way it knows. Armless and inarticulate, it can only bruise. You want him all to yourself, but he is half floating, half falling, stretched between realms. You yearn for his attention, pull with such insistence, he begins to split. Beloved toy, you have adored to pieces. One more of the Dear Gravities. Dear gravity, my father in his bed is a wrinkle among thin blankets, his breath an engine turning over. His arms go up sometimes in his ungentle sleep as if to protect the eggshell of his skull, as if he is hiding under the desk of the world and the sirens have begun to blare. Dear gravity, I cannot say he doesn't float despite this heaviness. He drifts in a half sleep, speaks in a half tongue, such dreaming only the dying can do. The meat he asks back to his bare bones won't come from soup or cups of pudding cajoled into the red gap of his mouth, which has gone loose as a broken hinge. One more only, this the very last, the nurse says, spoon tilted, her own hips straight and solid, someone so planted in the world it would take a violence to uproot her. My father both sinks and soars in his dry, thin paper skin. His lips are red and dark despite their roughed up skin. Despite such poverty of moisture, they demark the entrance to the watery cave of his body. The lexicon of questions is poor in relation to that vast tunnel, the red and slightly pulsing tunnel beyond the ivory markers of his rotted porcelain teeth. Where in that disintegrating labyrinth where in that disintegrating labyrinth is the him that is? Not the lights that flash and blink on the body's dashboard, not the automatic systems that stutter along until they don't, not even the voice that sometimes booms out orders, surprising the muddle of confounded mutterers, the litany of small refusals whispered hoarsely in the direction of the lamp's plastic-wrapped shade. What is left, gravity? After the body has been turned to ashes, and after his imprint and stink have been replaced by someone else's, and after even the words have been spoken among friends and family, and the catered panini cleared finally away, after the urn has been placed on a mantle, where will he be? Not anywhere anyone's hand can reach for his own, which rests yet on a blanket, and through which runs a live blue vein like a mountain range at dusk, seen from very far above. I know they're cheery. Oh, okay, thank you. And this is the last poem in the book called Manifestation. Not even the paintings of Caravaggio prepared me for the dead man curled like a kitten and paler than dust. There was no blood and the light was so thin. The closet gaped and the buzz of hospital machinery hung in the curtains like a leftover stink. No one carried anybody else's head away on a platter. The one nurse silently veiled the bowl of uneaten applesauce. The plastic cup of ice chips stayed unmelted, as if time had stopped in the room while the hallway swirled with talk. Everyone is orphaned. It is a secret club the entire world is part of. Even my cat needs the blanket as if it is her own last mother. The yard is full of little roadrunners with no one to teach them their dinosaur ways. All the sights those eyes would have loved are showing themselves off to someone else. I will send myself articles that mention the word poetry and books that are both academic and hilarious. I will try not to think about the body, that rusted, useless thing that is always tripping on itself. Maybe there will be hauntings, breaths in the still air at significant moments, tea leaves. I will ask for advice. Maybe sometimes the shadows will become doorways. I will strive to see you standing at the threshold of. Let's see. Is that a little better in terms of, could you hear me okay in the back? Okay, thank you. It sounds really loud up here, so it's hard to tell. I'm gonna read, so I grew up in Minneapolis, and Minneapolis has been pretty heavily on my mind lately, as it has many people's. So this is a brand new poem about something that happened a really long time ago. The very last year I lived in Minneapolis was 1991, and there was a snowstorm, famous snowstorm on Halloween that dumped like feet of snow everywhere. So this is Halloween Snowstorm, Minneapolis, 1991. I remember that I didn't know my neighbors except the man across the hall with a kitten he let wander our hallway. On the morning, Dee called at dawn, muttering nonsense about angels and windows. I saw the city buried in snow, white sky, white mounds, the street whited out, and everything as still as a held breath. The kitten man and I went floor to floor, and at every door asked what was needed, then took a wagon that someone had and struggled into the new white-out world where everyone lived now to help another. We worked in pairs and coteries to dig out cars from beneath snowbanks, to carve paths wide enough for one person to pass between piles which were already starting to lose their brilliant shine. We sculpted streets where memory said streets should be. Took turns following the shovelers with bags of sand and canisters of coarse salt. We took turns shoveling, throwing the heavy stuff into mounds that fattened and grew and sweated and froze slick again. We dragged the wagon a few blocks that took all morning to a store that was somehow open and brought whatever we could find that was anything like what our neighbors wanted, and heaved the wagon back another hour along our own furrows and up the mountain where the front steps used to be, and knocked again at all the doors on all of the floors to hand out all the not quite what was asked for sundries, and went to our own doors exhausted, happy as I had ever been. Two more. This one starts out sort of as an ekphrastic poem. It starts out thinking about Chagall paintings and then goes elsewhere. So it's called Night Bloomer. In Chagall's paintings, horses might bloom from chimneys, crow's wings petal into a lady's hat, a bride dances on air, and somehow klezmer music buzzes from the frames. That is, I feel something mournful in the celebratory, the night opening like a mouth to release peonies and roosters. This year again, a plague of moths reincarnates, papers the doors and windows with flurry. The smell of wings singeing against bulbs, a carpet of spent thoraxes. Frightening and a little bit beautiful, this abundance, this rush hour confluence on windshields, moths gushing through the smallest opening, an invasion of breathing. Their wings are well-worn rags, everyone is waving all the time. Nothing is more unreal than the real. For instance, the dog the neighbors exiled to the backyard where it cried all night into our ears, fermenting dreams with the kind of dread that wakes you, tearful and filled with despair, so dry and bitter, you think you will never taste anything sweet again. In the morning, the yard is empty, as if such desperation never existed, as if sorrow were an imaginary state and no one and nothing was ever abandoned. I wander my own yard, counting little storms of lost feathers, a dozen holes where something has uprooted all the newly planted seedlings, a huddle of wrens scolding as I reach to pick the single strawberry the night has cajoled into perfect ripeness. And I'll end with a poem called Yard Work. The hawk is back, she who gores mourning doves on the front stoop, pulling loose one bloody filament at a time. Good mother, she nests each year high in the spiny pine from which ayahs test their downy wings. Not the neighbor's tilting 3/4 dead ponderosa that will fall one of these gusty days across a nearby roof, smashing fences and dragging down power lines, but on the other side, where that neighbor yells at his dog. The hawk nests there, and from there scours the yards of small birds and rodents. I worry for the cat, though she is fat with sunlays and lizard tails. I worry for the hawk, the poisons the dog shouter sprays in his harbor of skeletons, the tinderbox of his yard stacked tight with dried wood. He roars into the phone for hours. He paces his rickety domain, poisoning and yelling, a little capsule of America. After the hawk sends her babies into the world to hunt for themselves, they will move to another neighborhood. My son is somewhere, driving my parents' old car, while I wander the perimeter of what I think of as mine. He's out there with the shouters and the poisoners and the other fledglings, and I am here, digging out one deeply rooted weed at a time, watching the mother hawk as she swoops and returns, carrying her wounded offering from margin to margin. Thank you.